All right, students, today we're going to very quickly learn, it's very simple, how to find the slope and the y-intercept from a table of values. We always use the the slope-intercept formula where y equals the slope, m, the change in y over the change in x, and b, the y-intercept, and remembering that when x is 0, that's when that line will cross the y-axis. So y equals mx plus b. All right, here I have a table of values, and it looks very scary, and that's okay because you're not used to this yet, but I am simply going to find the change in y and the change in x. And when I have found that, I will have my slope, and then I'll be able to find my b. So, from here to here, from -4 to -9 is a decrease of 5, which means I will use -5. From -9 to -14 is a decrease of 5. So my change in y is -5. I'm looking for my change in x. From -6 to -5. Now I use these two and these two, so I have to use these two like this. So from -6 to -5 is adding 1. And again, these two and these two, so these two like that. -5 to -4 is plus 1. So my change in x is 1. So my slope is -5 because -5 divided by 1 is -5. So now I need to find my y-intercept. And my y-intercept is found when my x is 0. So the first thing that I like to do is I like to look at my numbers and see what's going on. So I have -6, -5, -4, -3, -2, -1, 0. And then over here, I have -4, -9, -14. So I'm going to subtract. I will have -29, and I will subtract again, and I will have -34. And this is my b. My b is -34. So it turns out that my equation is y equals my slope, -5x, and this is -34, so plus -34, but that's awkward, so we're just going to say subtract 34. And this is going to be my equation. And it is really easy to make mistakes, so I always use my calculator to check. So using my calculator, I simply go to my y equals, and I put in -5x minus 34. I don't need the graph, so I just go to the table. And I look for when x is -6. And I check to see if my y's match. -4, -5, -9, -4, -14, -3, -19, -2, -24. If more than 3 of my numbers match, that most assuredly is my equation. So my equation of this very strange table is -5x minus 34. So now I have another one. It's a little bit easier to manage. I'm going to find my change in y. So my change in y from 10 to 6 is subtracting 4. From 6 to 2 is subtracting 4. I can do all of them, but I don't need to do all of them. From -5 to -3, it's adding 2. -5 plus 2 is -3. -3 plus 2 is -1. So I have my change in y and my change in x. My change in y is -4. And my change in x is +2. So -4 over 2. So my m equals -2. That's my m. Now I need to find my b. Now the thing about this is I'm pretty good with numbers. I like them, so I think about them. So I know it's going to go -5, -3, -1, 1. Well, the number halfway between -1 and 1 is 0. And the number halfway between 2 and -2 is 0. But we're not always going to be able to do it that easily, so I want to show you how to do it the right way. So we are going to substitute an x value in the part of our equation that we know. So we know so far that y equals -2x. And then we know we need to add or subtract something, and then we'll have our y. So x is going to be 3. X is 3. Y is -6. So -6 is going to be equal to -2 times 3, and I will need to add or subtract something. So I got to find out what's going on. So -6 equals -6. Well, I don't need to add anything. I don't need to subtract anything. So I'm thinking that I am correct. But that was really easy. So I'm going to get my calculator and I'm going to go back to y equals. And I'm going to put in y equals -2x. And I'm going to look at the table and be sure. So when x is -5, y is 10. When x is -3, y is 6. When x is -1, y is 2. When x is 0, y is 0. So I am correct. My y-intercept is 0. So I don't have to add or subtract anything. So my equation is y equals -2x. Now you will notice there's a lot of work on here. I'm going to leave you a lot of room on your paper to do a lot of the work that's on here, because everything cannot always be done in the calculator. Sometimes you have to be aware of what you're doing and just write everything down. So now I have another one. This one looks different, and for some of us that is very scary when things look different. But do I still have an x? Yes. Do I still have a y? Yes, I do. So I still am simply finding my change in y over my change in x. The only thing I have to be aware of is that this y is on the top always, and on this weird table, x is on the top. So I need to be very careful that whatever this change is, that is what I put on the top. So from 5 to 3 is subtracting 2. From 3 to 1 is also subtracting 2. So my change in y, probably shouldn't write this there, right over here. My change in y is going to be -2. So now I'm going to have my change in x. My change in x from -2 to -1 is adding 1. From -1 to 0 is adding 1. So my change in x is adding 1, which means that my slope is -2. That's my slope. So I need my equation. Y equals mx plus b. Y equals -2x. And I will add or subtract something. And I'm going to use an x value that I am very comfortable with. I really like 0. And I think I've just noticed something on my table, but I'm not going to say it just yet. So when x is 0, I'm going to substitute 0. So I have y equals -2 times 0. And it's saying to me that when x is 0, y has to be 1. So this is actually going to be 1. So 1 equals 0. And that's very strange, because 1 doesn't equal 0. But if I added 1, then 1 would equal 0 plus 1. So it turns out that y equals my slope, -2 with my x, plus 1. This is going to be my equation. And I can check myself in my calculator. And if you're paying attention here to the b, you're noticing that when x is 0, whatever y is, that is your b. That is your y-intercept. So I didn't even have to do all the math. I just have to remember a couple simple rules. So I'm going to go to y equals, and it's going to be -2x plus 1. Go to my table. On my notes here on my table, when x is -2, y is 5. When x is -1, y is 3. When x is 0, y is 1. When x is 1, y is -1. So I am correct. This is my formula. We're going to go ahead and do one more. All right. Same concept as before. I have a table. I need to make an extreme note to self. This is my y. So I am looking for my change in y divided by my change in x, and that's going to be my slope. So my change in y. From 1 to 5, I have added 4. From 5 to 11, I have added 6. From 11 to 13, I have added 2. None of these are the same number. There's not a pattern here that I can see, but I'm not going to get upset. I'm simply going to check my x's. So from 0 to 2 is +2. From 2 to 5 is +3. And from 5 to 6 is +1. So now I simply have to see if my numbers change, if my points have the same ratio of change. So I have 4 over 2. 4 over 2. I have 6 over 3. And finally, I have 2 over 1. Well, 4 over 2 is 2. 6 over 3 is 2. And 2 over 1 is 2. So yes, it is unanimous. My slope is 2. So again, I have an equation. Y equals mx plus b. Y equals 2x plus or minus something. This is my b, because when x is 0, whatever this is my b. So 2x plus 1. And I'm going to put it in my calculator. 2x plus 1. I'm going to look at my table. When x is 0, y is 1. 2 and 5, 5 and 11, 6 and 13. And that's all we're doing, is we are finding a change and putting it over the other change, my change in y over my change in x. We are putting our 2 into our equation. We are looking at the table and seeing if there is an x of 0. If there is, that is my b. I simply write it down. If there is not, I could still find it. I just have to do a little math to make it happen. So right here, I'm going to pretend that this is not here. You can't see it anymore. It's not here. So I am going to use these with what I know about my slope to try to find my y-intercept. So when x is, I'm going to go when x is 5. So I know that I have a slope of 2, and I know that x is 5, and I know that whatever happens, it has to equal 11. So 11 equals 10? No. But what would I do to make it be 10? I would add 1. Whatever you add or subtract is your y-intercept. That is what goes at the end of your equation. So again, y equals 2x plus 1. I'm pretty certain you could do this. It's really not difficult. It's just having a process, and you are going to have to write some stuff down. So please don't skip the notes. They're really important.